Have you ever wondered what makes some books, like truly great books, stand the test of time? Like what makes them so special? Well, on today's deep dive, we are going to unpack like a literary giant.
Oh, okay.
One that's considered one of the greatest novels ever written.
I'm intrigued.
We're talking Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we're not just taking our word for it.
Right.
Faulkner himself, Faulkner.
Yeah.
He considered it like the pinnacle of novel writing. There's just something about Anna Karenina, even though it was published way back in 1878,
Right.
that just continues to resonate with readers even today.
Absolutely.
Now, it is a sprawling epic. Tolstoy really throws everything in this one.
Yeah.
Love, betrayal, social upheaval in Imperial Russia.
Wow.
But for our deep dive today, we're going to focus on some key excerpts and some critical interpretations to uncover what makes this story tick.
Because even if you haven't read all 1,000 pages, which I know a lot of people, it's daunting. It's a daunting book.
Right.
But you can still get a lot out of understanding those core themes and the characters and what Tolstoy was doing.
So no need to feel intimidated if this one's been sitting on your to-read list for years gathering dust.
Right. Tolstoy throws down the gauntlet in the very first line of the book.
Oh, really?
Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way.
Wow. What a way to start a book. It's like he's setting the stage, right?
Yeah.
For this whole exploration of human relationships and how they can be both beautiful and messy all at the same time.
Yeah, and they are messy.
They are messy.
We're introduced to Anna, our protagonist.
Right.
And she finds herself trapped in this loveless marriage with Alexei Karenin.
Okay.
Now, Karenin is a high-ranking government official, a man of significant social standing, so divorce is pretty much out of the question.
Unthinkable.
Yeah.
And then enters Count Vronsky. Talk about a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
He's this dashing cavalry officer, and his connection with Anna.
Oh, what happens?
Let's just say it throws her whole world into a tailspin.
Yeah. Tolstoy very masterfully interweaves Anna's story with that of Konstantin Levin. Now, Levin is a landowner, and he's grappling with questions of, love, marriage, and spirituality.
It's so interesting that you bring up Levin.
Yeah.
Because, he's not just some random character, right? He's often seen as Tolstoy's own reflection in the novel.
Right. Because Levin's struggles with faith directly mirror Tolstoy's own spiritual crisis that he was going through at the time.
Interesting.
It adds this really personal layer to the novel.
Right.
It's like Tolstoy is using Levin to kind of explore these existential questions, but on this big, grand stage.
And it was a really tumultuous period, right, for Russia.
It was.
With modernization rapidly changing society, as it tends to do. So we have these two main plots kind of interwoven. Anna's ill-fated love affair.
Right.
And Levin's internal struggle to find meaning.
Right.
And both of them are set against this backdrop of a society that seems to be on the verge of major transformation.
Yeah, because you have Levin, who represents sort of like the old world, right? He's a landowner.
He's a landowner, yeah.
And Tolstoy himself had very specific, some would even say radical, ideas about land ownership, social reform, that sort of thing.
I didn't realize Tolstoy was so, opinionated.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me more about his views.
So Tolstoy really believed in a simpler life, like closer to the land, closer to the people who worked the land.
Okay.
And he actually wrote a lot about his ideas for agricultural reform.
Wow, fascinating.
And you see this reflected in Levin's journey as he tries to find a more meaningful existence. Okay. He wants to get away from all the superficialities of the Russian aristocracy.
It's like he's using Levin as this mouthpiece for his own personal beliefs.
Yeah. And maybe even to challenge the readers, right? To think about their own...
To check themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of what makes Anna Karenina such an enduring work, It's still relevant today.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dive into these characters a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Anna, Vronsky, Karenin, Levin, these aren't just names on a page, right?
Right.
Tolstoy creates these complex individuals.
Yeah.
They're grappling with really raw human emotions.
Take Anna, for example. I mean, she is torn.
Yeah.
She's completely torn between this passion she has for Vronsky, this all-consuming passion, and then the expectations that society is just pushing down on her as a woman in that time and place.
And especially in her position.
Divorce.
Yeah.
Scandalous.
Yeah.
Impossible, really, for someone of her stature.
Yeah. And then you have Vronsky.
Yeah.
Is he really in love with her? Or is he just caught up in the thrill of this forbidden romance?
Right, right.
Tolstoy doesn't make it easy for us to judge,
He really doesn't. And I think that's what's so skillful about him as a writer.
Yeah.
He doesn't come in with these judgments like this person's right or wrong.
Right.
He lays it all out there. Their flaws, their desires, their motivations.
Yeah.
And it's really up to us as the reader to decide, okay, what do we make of these very real, messy situations?
It's true. And what about Karenin? I mean, he's often painted as this cold, unfeeling kind of character.
It's easy to just be like, oh, he's the antagonist.
Yeah, yeah.
But Tolstoy was much too good of a writer, I think, to make any of his characters one-dimensional.
Right.
I think Karenin represents that very rigid, unyielding part of Russian society.
Okay.
But even he can feel betrayal. He can feel heartbreak. And I think Tolstoy, by doing that, he forces us to recognize that everyone has these complexities, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Even the characters that we might initially write off.
Totally.
And maybe he's asking us to look for those complexities in ourselves.
Right, exactly. Speaking of complexities, there's this recurring image in the novel that I found really striking. Trains.
Oh, yeah.
They keep popping up at these really pivotal moments.
How interesting, yeah.
It's like they're symbolic or something.
Yeah, a lot of literary critics point out those trains, They represent that modernization that's happening in Russia at the time. It's it's changing the landscape, right? It's changing the pace of life, even back then.
Right. It's like this unstoppable force.
Right. And it leaves these characters like Anna maybe feeling
how?
Unmoored. I don't know.
Adrift.
Adrift, yes. They don't know where they fit in anymore in this new world.
It makes me think about how we view the internet today.
Oh, interesting. How so?
It connects us, but it also creates all this anxiety, this feeling of
Right. Information overload.
Almost like we can't keep up.
Yeah.
Tolstoy was onto something,
Yeah. This feeling of being caught between those eras.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out where you belong.
It's amazing how these themes are still so relevant.
Right.
We're still grappling with these same questions today. Love, societal expectations, the impact of technology. It's
like he was writing for today.
Yeah.
So
it really makes you wonder, what Tolstoy would have to say about our modern relationships if he were alive today.
It's true, because it is so different from 19th century Russia, but...
Are we really that different?
Yeah, are we?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of great literature.
Yeah.
It goes beyond those specific times and places.
Yeah.
It makes us ask those big fundamental questions about what it means to be human.
Exactly. And speaking of those big questions, those big themes,
yeah,
the Wikipedia excerpts, they highlighted a few others that run throughout the novel. And we've touched on societal expectations a bit.
We have.
But there's also this theme of hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
Especially within the aristocracy.
Yeah, that upper echelon of Russian society, he was not a fan.
No. And why is that? What was he trying to get at?
I think Tolstoy saw right through them.
Okay.
He saw the extravagance, but he also saw the moral hypocrisy, right?
Okay.
They were the ones making the rules, but they weren't necessarily following them.
Oh, I see. So it's he's showing the disconnect.
Exactly.
Between what they're preaching and what they're actually doing.
And it adds this whole other layer of complexity to Anna's story, right?
Oh, okay.
Because she's held to this standard that a lot of the people around her aren't even living up to.
It's the more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Right.
We still see double standards today, don't we?
All the time, yeah.
It's another reminder that even though the specifics are different, those fundamental questions that Tolstoy was wrestling with, they're still so relevant today.
Okay, so we've got societal expectations, we've got hypocrisy.
Right.
What else? What else is Tolstoy exploring in this epic?
What else, indeed? Well, I feel like there's this...
he really liked poking at those societal structures.
Yeah, he liked to expose them, right? Show the cracks.
Yeah.
Well, he also looks at jealousy, and not just in the romantic relationships.
Oh, that's a good point. Because you definitely see it with Anna and Vronsky.
Oh, yeah.
But it goes beyond that, doesn't it?
Yeah, where else do we see it?
Levin and his brother, Nikolai.
What happens?
Jealousy just poisons their relationship. And it also comes up in families,
Oh, interesting.
creating these rifts between people who should be close.
It's like this, it's almost like Tolstoy is saying that jealousy is this fundamental human flaw.
Yeah.
That it can pop up anywhere at any time.
Yeah. And just completely destroy things.
Yeah. Destroy relationships, destroy people even.
Right.
It's pretty powerful stuff.
It really is. And it shows, again, like, how deeply he understood, like, the human psyche.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to look at those dark parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
The things that we don't really want to acknowledge.
And he does it so honestly.
He does.
It's like he's just laying it all out there.
Yeah.
No judgment.
It's like observation.
Just, this is the human condition, folks.
It makes you wonder, like, what would he say about us?
Right.
About how we deal with these emotions today.
Totally. Yeah. But there's one more theme that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
And that's faith.
Ah, yes.
And this one is particularly interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because of, Tolstoy's own journey with faith, right?
Right, exactly. Because he was a man of faith.
Okay.
But he also had his doubts.
Right.
He wrestled with those big questions, like, what's the meaning of life? Why is there suffering?
Yeah, the big ones.
The big ones. And you see those same struggles playing out with Levin.
Right.
Because Levin is desperately searching for something that feels real to him,
Okay.
He wants a faith that can help him make sense of it all.
That makes sense of the good and the bad.
Yeah, the beauty and the pain of just being alive.
I think it's really powerful how Tolstoy uses his own life to infuse the novel with this kind of raw, honest emotion.
Yeah, totally.
He's not trying to preach.
Right.
He's not saying this is the right way to believe or anything.
He's just exploring it alongside his characters.
Exactly.
He's right there with them.
And it makes it so much more powerful because of that, don't you think?
I do, because it brings us into the conversation too.
Yes.
He's inviting us to wrestle with these questions right alongside him.
Exactly, because that's what good art, good writing does, right? It stays with you. It makes you think.
It sparks something.
Yeah, it sparks something. It makes you want to better understand yourself or the world around you.
It's that feeling you get when you finish a really great book and you want to sit with it for a while.
Totally. You want to go for a walk and think or
call a friend and be like, "Oh my God, we need to talk about this book."
Yes, exactly.
And what's so amazing about Tolstoy is that he does all of this exploration without ever sounding preachy.
Right.
He's not giving us answers.
Right.
He's just presenting us with this world.
He lets it unfold naturally.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think Anna Karenina is still so debated today.
Right.
Because there's no one right answer. It's all about your interpretation, your experience with the story.
He trusts the reader to engage with the material.
Yeah.
To come to their own conclusions.
And that's kind of rare, I think, nowadays.
It is. It's a very confident writer who's willing to do that. Yeah.
He knew the story he wanted to tell.
Right.
And he trusted that it would resonate with people.
It's kind of a timeless story in that way. I think. It continues to provoke, to challenge. Mm-hmm. He's like, here you go. I made this. Deal with it.
Right. And he's not shying away from showing us the different facets of that society.
Right.
You really get a sense of that contrast between the aristocracy living these lavish lifestyles.
Right.
And then the reality of the countryside, the rural life.
It's true. We've talked a lot about that kind of social commentary that's woven into this story. Mm-hmm. But for listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with Russia in the 19th century, what was Tolstoy trying to say? What was his message about the society he was living in?
So Tolstoy was really aware of the inequality of his time.
Okay.
And he was very critical of the nobility, their extravagance, the hypocrisy.
Right.
He really contrasted that with the peasantry and how they lived, which he saw as more
authentic.
Yeah, and simpler. Yeah, and that comes through, I think, in the novel.
Okay.
He's always kind of coming back to that question of what does it mean to really live a good life, a meaningful life?
Right. And is it just about being rich and powerful, or is there something more?
Exactly. Yeah. Tolstoy seemed to think that real meaning wasn't going to be found in some fancy ballroom.
Right.
It was in those connections to the land, to family, to a faith that really resonated, deep down.
It's like he's searching for something more.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool how he brings all that together. But it's all well and good to talk about these themes.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to kind of bring it back to our listeners.
Yeah.
Why does all of this matter today?
Right.
Why should we care about a novel written over 100 years ago?
Because even though, it was written in the 19th century, it's about all of us,
Okay.
It's about those choices that we make.
Great.
The consequences that we face.
Love, loss.
Yeah, love, loss. Like our desire to belong, to have a purpose.
It's like he's holding up a mirror.
Yeah.
To humanity, to the human experience.
And maybe forcing us to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, I don't know, it makes me think about like the pressures we face today.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's, obviously a completely different time period.
Yeah.
Like, don't we all feel that pull?
Yeah, that tension.
Between what we want and what like society tells us we're supposed to want.
Oh, totally.
And today it's like, it's almost inescapable, right?
Yeah.
Like think about social media.
Oh my God.
And just like the constant barrage of images and messages about how we're supposed to look, how we're supposed to act, what we're supposed to buy.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
But I think Tolstoy saw that coming. Like, remember he was writing during this time of massive technological advancement?
Oh, that's true.
And maybe he kind of predicted.
What do you mean?
That those changes, even though they seem like progress, they could also lead to this feeling of alienation.
Right.
Like we're not really connected to each other.
It's like this weird paradox.
Totally. Like we're more connected than ever, but also maybe lonelier.
Right. And more disconnected from like our true selves, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's the trade-off.
Wow. Okay, so to wrap up our little deep dive on Anna Karenina, I think it's safe to say that this is a story that has something to say to everyone, no matter who you are, where you come from.
It's about what it means to be human.
Exactly. And what I think is so cool about it is that it doesn't try to give you the answers.
Right.
It's more about like asking the right questions and leaving you to grapple with them.
Exactly. It's an invocation to think, to reflect, to keep the conversation going.
And maybe that's the mark of a truly great book.
Yeah.
That it stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It makes you want to pick up the phone and call someone and be like, have you read this?
Yes.
And then talk about it for hours.
Exactly.
And maybe that's how we keep those conversations alive, by sharing those stories that have really moved us.
And by asking those tough questions.
Yeah, exactly.
So until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And most importantly,
keep diving deep.